Welcome everybody. Let's continue enthusiastically with the series on the letters to the Church of Corinth. In this video we'll have a look at all the things that took place in the background, so we will understand more of Paul's teaching in chapter 6. This chapter can be summarized as a clash between two cultures that are diametrically opposed to each other. It's very interesting to see what kind of advice Paul gives to this church. Let's start by describing Greek culture. The Greeks were thinkers who often came together in the city squares in order to philosophize. They had enough time for discussion while the women were working. Administering justice would soon become a hobby. Sometimes this collective hobby got so out of hand that they had sittings with juries consisting of 1,000 up to 6,000 people. Luckily, the high numbers were exceptions. It was, however, quite common to have juries of 201 people for cases that amounted to small rates and juries of 401 people for higher rates. As a result of that, the men in many cities were well educated regarding jurisdiction. Most of them could act as lawyers, so going to court was just a small step. Jewish culture was, however, totally different regarding all of this. Having a conflict would not immediately result in making it public, but one would first of all try to solve it in the family circle. If that didn't solve it, there were still the elders of the village or synagogue who could cut the knots. It was inconceivable for Jewish people to go to a court that didn't acknowledge God's law. Going to such a court would be seen as an act of blasphemy. Another difference had to do with sexuality. The Jewish people have creation as their foundation where this topic is concerned. Genesis directly makes mention of the first marriage after the creation of Adam and Eve. Sex outside marriage was strictly forbidden. See, for example, Leviticus 18. The strict Jewish laws concerning sexuality prevented many venereal diseases and at the same time gave women far more protection than was given by the laws in the other countries. The surrounding nations had decreed the law of the strong. Your hierarchical position entitled you to certain sexual privileges. A king, for example, could claim any man or woman for himself. The hierarchical view on sex also led to extreme behavior, like men who raped other men in order to humiliate them, or men who tried to submit gods by having sex with temple prostitutes. In those cases, sex was used as a means of power. The Old Testament regards such acts as being repulsive. For men in those days, it was common to literally take women. Rape was only criminal in case the woman happened to be someone else's wife or in case the hierarchical laws were violated. The view in Judaism was totally different. In some cases, the man could be legally bound to marry his victim. In that case, he was bound to take care of her for as long as he lived. Deuteronomy 22 verses 28 and 29 speaks about that. This might sound a bit weird and cruel to us. Nevertheless, this law prevented many rapes and resulted in the fact that these women would not die of starvation. So, in Judaism, sex and responsibility were two sides of the same coin. This was not the case in Greek thinking. They reasoned, we've been given a stomach to be fed and sexual lusts to be satisfied. The excessive Greek lifestyle led to all kinds of situations that disrupted the entire society. There were many rich people who were publicly drunk and causing trouble. So it's not strange that Paul, with his Jewish mindset, wants to keep this influence out of the church. In verses 9 and 10, Paul writes the well-known enumeration. I'd like to highlight one Greek word which I think sums up the problem Paul distinguishes. I refer to the word malachus. This word is used for men who had become morally weak and were no longer aiming for their goals, but only paid attention to their personal desires. Paul's message on the kingdom of God, with its salvation and transformation, is flatly opposed to it. What is surprising, however, is Paul's introduction on his advice regarding sexuality. He writes in verse 12, I have the right to do anything, but not everything is beneficial. I have the right to do anything, but I will not be mastered by anything. Paul doesn't begin with laws, but with freedom, even regarding this morally perverted city and the church that has been influenced by it. We can learn a lot from it. Paul doesn't depict God as someone who doesn't want his people to enjoy themselves, but as someone who gives freedom and wants to protect us. You are, according to Paul, only truly free if you control your desires, instead of your desires controlling you.